I remember it like it was yesterday. My dad was in the living room, looking tired after a whole day at the office, but his eyes lit up when Ethan came in showing off his science project. "Look at that, Linda!" "Our future engineer," he exclaimed while I sat in the corner, trying to show off my new code. Nobody paid any attention. Since I was a kid, computers have been my passion. While other kids played outside, I would take apart old PCs just to understand how they worked. My room was a sanctuary of electronic parts and books about programming. But to my family, especially after my dad married Linda, it was just a waste of time. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. Linda brought her son Ethan to our home when I moved away for college. I came back for financial reasons and, suddenly, my space wasn't mine anymore. Ethan, 2 years younger than me, was studying mechanical engineering at the priciest university in the area. A real profession, as Linda liked to emphasize during dinner. Ethan's diplomas decorated the living room walls. And my web programming certificate? Stashed away in some drawer in my room. Messing with computers isn't going to get you anywhere, my dad kept repeating like it was some mantra Linda taught him. During the day, I worked as a clerk at an electronics store. At night, I was a waiter at a downtown restaurant. On weekends, I did odd jobs fixing computers. Not because I needed the money that badly for myself, it was to help pay Ethan's tuition. "Son, we need another $700 this month for Ethan's lab supplies," my dad would say. And even though I was exhausted, I'd hand over the money without questioning it. Linda would smile, but she never thanked me. It was as if it was my duty. After midnight, my real life began. Sitting at the desk in my little room, with headphones on so as not to bother the family, I'd study programming for hours. I learned languages, frameworks, app development. The digital world was where I truly existed. I only slept for hours a night. Linda would laugh at my dark circles during breakfast. If instead of being on the internet all night, you studied something useful like your brother, I would just nod and head off for another day of double shifts, while Ethan slept in late in his newly decorated room. My first break came when I fixed a businessman's laptop at the store. Impressed with my efficiency, he asked if I knew how to make apps. "Yes, sir," I replied, even though I only had theoretical knowledge. He handed me his business card. "Call me, I've got a project for you." I spent 3 weeks sleeping just 2 hours a night developing an inventory management app for his company. When I delivered it, his eyes lit up. "This is better than systems that cost thousands." I received my first significant payment, $2,000. I hid the check from my family. Soon, more clients started coming. I created an online portfolio and began taking freelance jobs. Every project boosted my confidence and knowledge. Finally, someone valued what I did, even if it wasn't those living under the same roof. One night, I developed a simple app for personal finance control. I published it on digital stores with no big expectations. To my surprise, it got 5,000 downloads in the first week. The positive comments filled me with a happiness I had never felt at home. For the first time, I thought I could really make a living out of it. In 6 months, my finance app reached 500,000 users. Companies started reaching out for partnerships. Meanwhile at home, I was still the kid who messed with computers. I kept my day jobs, just to keep up appearances. My first big contract came from a tech company in San Francisco. They wanted me to develop a digital security system. The payment, $35,000. I signed the contract shaking. On the same day, Linda asked me to chip in more money for Ethan's study trip. "I'm a bit tight right now," I lied, giving only half of what she asked. The contracts kept coming. My app soon started to offer a premium version, generating significant monthly revenue. I created 2 more apps, equally successful. I even hired remote developers for help. Before I knew it, my monthly income exceeded $50,000. I opened an account at another bank. I bought a powerful laptop that I kept hidden. At home, I stuck to my old slow laptop when the family was around. Ethan mocked, Does that junk still work? Dad, get him a decent computer. The inevitable confrontation came on a Thursday. Ethan announced during dinner that he planned to open a specialized mechanical workshop. My dad and Linda exchanged looks. We need to talk about something important, my dad started, pouring himself another glass of wine. Ethan has a golden opportunity, but we need some startup money. Linda and I have already put together a part of it, but... Linda interrupted, we need $20,000. You have access to the money your grandfather left, right? We know you never used it. I choked on my food. The money my grandfather left was the only reminder I had of him, exactly $20,000 for my studies. Money I had never touched because I considered it sacred. I can't do that, I replied calmly. What do you mean, you can't? It's for your brother's future. Linda raised her voice. That money was meant for my studies from my grandfather. I'm not giving it up. My dad slammed his hand on the table. You've always been selfish. You've been working at that store for years and never made any progress. Ethan has a bright future ahead. You have no idea who I am, I murmured. What did you say? Linda leaned in, her eyes flashing. I said no. I'm not giving you the money. For the first time, I stood my ground. Linda exploded, after everything we did for you. We gave you a home, food, and you won't even help your own brother. Ethan's face shifted between shock and disdain. My dad got up and pointed toward the door. If you're not going to help this family, maybe it's time you find somewhere else to live. You've got 1 hour to grab your stuff. My dad's words echoed as I climbed the stairs to my room. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a mix of anger and relief. Part of me knew this day would eventually come. I grabbed 2 big suitcases from the closet and began sorting out what was essential. Clothes, personal documents, and, most importantly, my powerful laptop hidden beneath a loose floorboard. It was my real life, my identity, everything I had built while they pretended I wasn't worth anything. While packing my things, I overheard Linda on the phone in the hallway. Her voice was loud enough for me to be sure I'd hear it. You won't believe it, Aunt Marta. We found out he was stealing money from his dad's account. Yes, siphoning small amounts for months. And now he's refused to help his brother, pure ingratitude. I froze with the suitcase in my hand. She was spreading lies about me to the whole family. I wanted to go out and confront her, but I knew it would be useless. Nobody would question her version of the story. When I finished packing, I went downstairs carrying my suitcases. Linda and my dad were in the living room, with Ethan slouched on the sofa sporting a discreet smile. Leave your keys on the table, ordered my dad without looking me in the eyes. I placed the bunch of keys on the coffee table. My hand lingered for a moment over the key to the house where I grew up, where I used to play before Linda and Ethan came into our lives. A pang of nostalgia hit me, but it quickly passed. You were always a disappointment, Linda said, arms folded. We always knew you'd never amount to anything. Maybe one day you'll realize how wrong you are, I replied calmly, heading for the door. I didn't even get to the doorknob. My dad flung the door open abruptly and started tossing my suitcases onto the front lawn. One of them opened up, scattering some clothes across the damp grass on that serene night. Get out of here, he yelled as curious neighbors peered through the windows. Ungrateful. After everything we did for you. I walked out silently, gathering my things from the lawn. The humiliation burned my face, but I kept my head up. The door slammed violently behind me. Using my cell phone, I called a taxi while organizing my suitcases. I took one last look at the house. Through the living room window, I saw Ethan watching me with a victorious gaze. That night, I stayed in a cheap hotel near downtown. Sitting on the hard bed, I opened my laptop and checked my bank account. The 6-digit balance shone on the screen like a silent reminder I wasn't the person they thought I was. Messages began coming in from relatives. Uncles, cousins, everyone asking how I could steal from my own family and still be so ungrateful. Linda had been efficient in crushing my reputation. I turned off my phone, unable to deal with any more of it that night. The sun peeked through the cheap hotel curtain when I woke up. For a moment, the surroundings felt strange until the reality of last night hit me again. Strangely, I didn't feel sad, just a sense of freedom I'd never experienced before. My first act as a truly independent man was to buy a new SIM card for my phone. I needed to keep in touch with my clients, but I wanted to avoid the toxic messages from my family. I only transferred my professional contacts. I had breakfast at a nearby diner while planning my next steps. I opened my laptop and sent emails to 3 real estate agencies. With my income, I could easily rent a nice apartment, but I preferred to be cautious so as not to draw any attention. "Man, I can't believe they kicked you out like that," a message from Jason, my only real friend from school, popped up on the screen. He was the only one who partially knew about my professional success. "Need a place to crash?" "My couch is available," he offered. I accepted his offer for the time being. Jason lived in a modest apartment about 30 minutes from the city. "Stay as long as you need," he told me when I arrived with my suitcases. "Now tell me the whole story." For 3 hours, I told Jason everything, not just about being kicked out, but the whole story of the past few years. My secret success, the apps, the contracts, everything. His eyes grew wider with every detail. "Man, you're literally rich. And they treated you like a loser? This is surreal." I shrugged. It was never about the money. They just never believed in me. In the following days, I visited several apartments. I found the perfect place, a spacious loft downtown, with an amazing view of the city and just enough space to set up my office. The contract was signed in record time. While setting up my new home, I kept up with my work routine. I held online meetings, closed new contracts, and kept improving my apps. For the first time, I could work in broad daylight without hiding. "We're expanding into the Asian market," I told my small team of developers during a video conference. "We need to adjust the interface and hire translators." My life was flourishing. I hired more people, including a personal assistant to manage my increasingly packed schedule. I started investing some of my profits, diversifying my income. One night, looking out the window of my new apartment, I realized how drastically my life had changed in just a few weeks. The city lights reflected off the glass, overlaying my reflection. It felt like I was looking at 2 versions of myself, the man I had become and the invisible kid I once was. That night, I made an important decision: I would officially register my company. I wasn't going to work as an individual freelancer anymore. It was time to establish my brand in the world. Phoenix Tech would be the name, a symbol of my rebirth from the ashes. Weeks turned into months. My company grew rapidly, attracting the attention of tech media. A technology magazine invited me for an interview. I hesitated, fearing exposure, but decided to accept. The article would focus only on the professional side, without personal details. "Self-taught developer turns personal app into a digital empire," said the headline. The picture only showed my hands on a keyboard. I asked for discretion, and the editors respected that. For months passed since the night of the eviction. My company had doubled in size, and I was considering buying a bigger apartment or maybe even a house. That's when my new phone rang, showing a number I didn't immediately recognize. "Hello?" I answered, distracted by lines of code on my computer screen. Silence on the other end, then a familiar sigh. "Son, it's me." My dad's voice made my heart race, not from longing, but from an instant apprehension. I closed my laptop and focused on the call. "How did you get this number?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Jason gave it to me." It took a while, but I managed to convince him. There was a pause. "We need to talk." I arranged to meet at a neutral cafe, away from both my new apartment and their house. I purposely chose a modest spot and dressed simply. Some lessons are hard to unlearn. I arrived 10 minutes early and picked a table in the back. My dad came in accompanied by Linda. I wasn't expecting that, but I kept my expression unchanged as they approached. "You look good," my dad commented, trying to break the ice. Linda kept her lips pressed tight, as if it was a major sacrifice just to be there. They placed their orders, and an uncomfortable silence set in. So, I began, "What did you want to talk about?" My dad looked at Linda, who nodded subtly. It was obvious they had rehearsed this conversation. "Son, we made mistakes," he started, staring into his coffee. "We were too hard on you that night." Linda interjected, "We were stressed about our finances." Ethan's business needed that upfront investment. "And how's his business going?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. My dad and Linda exchanged glances. "It didn't work out," my dad finally admitted. "Ethan's partner ran off with half the money, and the rest, well, there were some miscalculations." "What a pity," I replied flatly. "He's devastated," Linda added in a measured tone meant to evoke sympathy. "He invested everything he had, and so did we. The situation is complicated." I finally understood their real reason for the meeting. It wasn't about reconciliation, it was about need. "How much do you need?" I asked straight out. The shock on their faces was briefly replaced by a glimmer of hope. Linda leaned forward. "How do you know we need money?" "I'm not as naive as you think," I replied. "You kicked me out, humiliated me, spread lies about me to all the relatives, and now you show up for months later talking about mistakes and how difficult your situation is. It's pretty obvious." My dad looked ashamed for a moment, but Linda quickly recovered. "We're truly sorry for what happened," she said, placing her hand over mine on the table. I instinctively pulled away. "And yes, we're in trouble. We had to mortgage the house to cover Ethan's debts. We need $30,000 to avoid foreclosure." "30,000?" I repeated, almost laughing at the irony. "That was less than what I made in a week when I was living with you guys, being treated like a loser." "I know it seems like a lot," my dad interjected, "but we thought maybe you could use that money from your grandfather. After all, you never needed it for your studies, as was planned." I took a deep breath, trying to contain the growing indignation. They really thought I was still the desperate kid craving approval. "That money was invested a long time ago," I said calmly. "And you have no idea what's happened in my life since I left home." "Did you land a better job?" Linda asked condescendingly. "At the electronics store?" "Something like that," I replied vaguely. "I'll think about it and get back to you." I stood up, leaving enough cash on the table to cover the bill. Before leaving, I turned back one last time. Just out of curiosity, did Ethan come to apologize too? Silence was all I got. Linda looked away, and my dad stared at the floor. "Figured as much," I muttered, leaving the cafe with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. 2 weeks passed after the cafe meeting. I didn't answer the numerous messages and calls from my dad and Linda. I needed time to process everything. In the meantime, I dived into my work. Phoenix Tech was about to launch a new digital security platform for small businesses, and the final preparations demanded my full attention. On a rainy Wednesday, I was in my office reviewing contracts when the receptionist called. "Sir, 3 people are insisting on seeing you. They say they're your family." My stomach dropped. "Did they mention any names?" "Robert, Linda, and Ethan. They said it's urgent." I hesitated for a few seconds. "Tell them to come up." I straightened my tie and closed a few browser tabs. For the first time, I wasn't going to hide. I purposely left the company's financial dashboard on the screen, clearly showing the impressive numbers. When the door opened, the 3 of them looked completely stunned. The office was spacious, with a panoramic view of the city, furnished with designer pieces and state-of-the-art equipment. On the wall behind my desk, the Phoenix Tech logo glowed quietly. "Welcome," I said, remaining seated. My dad looked worn out, with deep dark circles under his eyes. Linda was trying to keep her composure, but her eyes were scanning the room, mentally calculating how much everything cost. Ethan, on the other hand, shifted between shock and discomfort. "Is all this yours?" my dad eventually asked. "Yes. This is my company." I pointed to the chairs. "Have a seat." They obeyed like scolded children. Linda was the first to recover from her shock. "Why didn't you ever tell us about this?" "You never asked," I replied simply. "You were too busy reminding me of how insignificant I was." "Son, we didn't," my dad started, but I cut him off. "Let's get to the point. Why are you here?" Linda glanced at Ethan, who had remained silent until now. He cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "We need your help," he finally said. "Things got worse. The bank is going to take the house in 2 weeks, and we have more debts." "How much?" I asked icily. $50,000, my dad replied, avoiding my gaze. I shook my head, almost laughing at the irony. That was exactly what I made in a month when I used to live with you all, being treated like a failure. "And why should I help you?" "We're family," Linda said as if that explained everything. "Despite our disagreements, family blood is stronger." "Disagreements?" I repeated. "You kicked me out, humiliated me, spread lies about me." "We were stressed," my dad defended. Ethan fidgeted, his hands wringing nervously, looking everywhere except at me. I sensed there was something more. "Ethan, do you have something to say?" He swallowed hard. Linda nudged him gently. "I'm sorry for what happened," he mumbled. "Explain." He looked at his parents as if seeking permission. Linda quickly nodded. "Remember your old laptop? The one that stopped working when you still lived with us?" I frowned. "Yes. It was important. That had my first projects on it." Ethan hesitated. I purposely damaged it. His confession hit the room like a bomb. Even Linda looked surprised at his frankness. "What did you say?" I asked, unsure if I had heard correctly. "I spilled coffee on its USB ports and messed with some things on the motherboard. I knew you were working on something, but I never imagined it was that." He gestured around at my office. "It was just jealousy. You always could fix things that I couldn't understand." The revelation hit me hard. That laptop contained my first apps, months of coding I'd poured my heart into. I lost everything because I had to completely reformat. Weeks of work gone because of pure malice. "Do you have any idea what you did?" I asked, my voice controlled despite my rising anger. "That useless toy, as you used to call it, was my future." "We didn't know," my dad interjected. "How were we supposed to guess you were building all that?" "You could have asked. You could have shown even the slightest interest." I got up and walked around the table. "Instead, you made fun of my computer games while I was literally funding your golden child's education." Linda sat up straighter. "It isn't fair to say that. We always treated you both equally." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Linda, do you really believe that?" An awkward silence fell. Ethan stared at the floor, my dad seemed lost in thought, and Linda maintained her mask of indignation, although it seemed less convincing now. "Let me be blunt," I finally said. "I'm not going to help you financially." "But the house," my dad began. "Sell the luxury car you bought for Ethan. Sell the expensive items you always prioritized over my needs. Solve your problems like adults. After everything we did for you?" Linda raised her voice, her true self showing again. "And what exactly did you do for me, Linda? Give me shelter and food? The bare minimum any parent is legally supposed to provide? Remind me every day how inferior I was? Or are you talking about when you spread around to the entire family that I was a thief?" My dad seemed to age with every word I said. Ethan remained silent, but I noticed something different on his face, maybe understanding, maybe genuine remorse. "The meeting is over," I declared, turning back to the area behind my desk. My assistant will show you the exit. You can't just abandon us, Linda insisted, clutching at the last emotional card she had. I can and I will. Just like you did to me. After they left, I sat in silence for almost an hour, processing everything. Ethan's confession had dredged up old wounds, but strangely, it also brought a sense of closure. All my suspicions confirmed in one single afternoon. That night, I made some important decisions. First, I blocked all of my family's numbers on my phone. Then, I emailed my relatives explaining my side of the story, not for revenge, but to clear my name. I attached documents proving my professional and financial journey, making it clear that I never had to steal from anyone. I've chosen to cut ties with Robert, Linda, and Ethan for personal reasons, I concluded in the email. I respect those who wish to stay in contact with them, but I ask for the same respect for my decision. Responses started coming in the next morning. Uncles and cousins were shocked by the truth. Some apologized for believing the lies. Others kept their distance, probably torn between my version and the family's. I accepted all the reactions calmly. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten letter from Ethan. Unlike his previous approaches, this one sounded sincere. I never realized how privileged I was until I saw your office and understood what you built on your own. I admit that I always felt jealous of your skills. You could solve any technical problem while I struggled with basic math in college. Destroying your laptop was the lowest act of my life, and I understand if you never forgive me. I'm not asking for money, I just wanted you to know that I'm genuinely sorry. I read the letter several times before tucking it away in a drawer. I didn't reply, but I also didn't throw it out. Maybe one day, when the wounds are completely healed, I'd find the words to respond. I threw myself even deeper into work. Phoenix Tech grew, we opened a bigger office, hired more staff. I started giving lectures at tech conferences, always careful to keep my personal life private. At one of these conferences, I met Jessica. She was a freelance graphic designer, hired to create visual materials for the event. When we introduced ourselves, I didn't mention that I was the owner of Phoenix Tech, I just said I worked there. Your presentation about intuitive interfaces was fascinating, she commented during the cocktail hour after the event. I've always wanted to understand more about the technical side to improve my designs. Our conversation flowed naturally, without any pretense or hidden motives. We exchanged professional contacts and, in the following weeks, I hired her for some company projects. Jessica was different from anyone I had ever met. Direct, honest, passionate about her work. And most importantly, she valued people for who they truly were, not for what they owned or how they were seen socially. In our third project together, I finally revealed that I was the company's founder. I figured it would be something like this, she said with a smile. You talk about Phoenix like it's your child. Why didn't you mention it before? She shrugged. It didn't seem important. I like working with you for your knowledge and creativity, not your title. Those words touched something deep in me. For the first time, I felt truly seen for who I was, not for what I represented, whether failure or success. 6 months later, Jessica moved into my apartment. A year after our first meeting, we bought a house together, not an ostentatious mansion, but a cozy place with a shared office space where we worked on projects side by side. You never told me much about your family, Jessica remarked one night while we rearranged some furniture. I paused for a moment before sharing my story. Surprisingly, the words flowed without the old bitterness. It was like telling someone else's story, a closed chapter of my life. I'm sorry for everything that happened, she said when I finished. But I'm also proud of the person you've become despite it all. Sometimes I wonder if I should have told you the truth from the start, I admitted. Maybe things would have been different. Jessica thought for a moment. Or maybe they'd be exactly the same, just with you trying to use your success to benefit them way before it was even deserved. Her perspective was clear and reassuring. In the following weeks, I even considered re-establishing some kind of limited contact with the family, maybe just with Ethan, whose remorse seemed genuine. But life had other plans. Phoenix Tech received a merger offer from a larger company, which meant we'd have to move to another state. At the same time, Jessica got an opportunity to lead the design department at a renowned agency in the same city. "It's like the universe is giving us a fresh start," she said as we analyzed the proposals. We accepted both offers. The move represented not only professional growth, but a complete new beginning, a life built entirely on our own terms, without the shadows of the past. On the eve of the move, I found Ethan's letter while I was organizing my documents. After a few moments of reflection, I wrote a brief reply. "I accept your apology. I hope you find your way. I'm following my own path." I didn't include a return address or any details about my new life. It was the closure I needed, not a full reconciliation, but a recognition that we're all more than our worst moments. As Jessica and I drove toward our new city with the sunrise on the horizon, I felt a deep sense of peace. Money was never the goal, it was just a byproduct of my passion. True wealth was in the freedom to be who I truly was without needing anyone's approval. "What are you thinking about?" Jessica asked, noticing my contemplative silence. "About how the toughest parts of life sometimes lead us exactly where we need to be." She smiled and squeezed my hand. The future lay ahead, full of possibilities that we would build together, one line of code at a time. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this.